Welcome to the first actual episode of Gryphon Manor. The Gryphon Hall series ended abruptly due to technical circumstances beyond my control, but it was not a wasted effort. I had a boatload of nerdy fun and I learned a lot, and it's been my experience that the messier the disaster, the more I usually learn. So this time around, I think things will run much smoother, and hopefully I'll get much further than last time. I don't really have an end goal in mind, so I'll just see how it goes. And I hope you make the journey with me to see how things turn out. As a little review for those of you returning here from the Gryphon Hall series, and of course any new folks that might happen to show up, I've been playing Minecraft off and on for a decade, but until the 2022 holiday season, it was almost all vanilla Minecraft. However, my friends reintroduced me to modded Minecraft last year, and I've been having an absolute blast experimenting and playing around. And if there's but one thing I've learned during that time, it's that with modded Minecraft, the possibilities are virtually endless. When my virtual world melted at the end of Gryphon Hall, I had just barely gotten things situated to the point where I was ready to rock and roll. And yet, even that foundational effort brought new revelations and discoveries, things that I could and would want to try next time around. Well, this is the next time around. So what caused the disaster in the first place? Even after hours of investigation, I don't truly know. But this is the kind of thing that one has to expect when playing with mods. If you play with fire, sooner or later you'll get burned. And I did. But it just taught me to be more careful and deliberate in the future. It did not kill my desire to build, and in fact it drives me to build bigger and better than ever before. And if you were to ask my wife, she would tell you that this is because I'm extremely stubborn. There's probably some truth to that, but mostly it's just the thrill of building on such a massive canvas with so many materials and devices to make not just a pretty or interesting environment, but a living, functioning world. And it's far better than any model train set I've seen. Bigger, more interactive, massively cheaper, and since it does not take up an entire room of the house, it saves me a lot of heartache with my wife and daughters. So, what about those precautions to prevent another meltdown, eh? The first thing I had to do was take a serious and critical approach to deciding which mods to use and which to discard or ignore. Now, this was incredibly tough. It was also incredibly time-consuming. I started with a list of all the mods I was using, or wanted to use. Now, after playing vanilla Minecraft almost exclusively for so many years, jumping back into the mod scene was like being a little kid in a candy store with a couple $100 of birthday money burning a hole in my pocket. I want it all, but that's unreasonable, or at least unrealistic. So through practical experimentation, and after a whole lot of time watching showcase videos and searching on CurseForge, I came up with a basic set, which, as it turns out, is just a slight adjustment from what I had for Gryphon Hall. I then prioritized that list with the mods I absolutely must have at the top, and the ones I would like to have, if possible, at the bottom. Then I started with a clean instance in Forge, and I started adding mods 1, 2, or 3 at a time, and then I would jump into a sample world and start running a series of experiments to see how the new additions impacted an otherwise clean or known benchmark. Aside from taking a ridiculous amount of time, this technique was very effective and informative. It was in this way that I learned that the Terralith mod was almost certainly the source of my terrain generation problems early on with Gryphon Hall. The mod seems to have a tendency to somehow redefine or alter seeds in existing worlds, and thus create boundary chunk problems. I did a lot of experimentation with and without Terralith, and while I did not always see these problems pop up when running Terralith, I have yet to see these problems without running Terralith, including evaluating over 80 seed candidates to find a new home for Gryphon Manor. And that was a real heartbreaker for me. I've been using Biomes of Plenty and Terra Blender, which is a prerequisite for Biomes of Plenty, but I was using them with Terralith as well, and the results were absolutely wonderful. If I take Terralith out of the mix, the results are still acceptable, but noticeably less striking. Apparently Terralith took whatever was going on with the other two and kicked it up a notch. Bam! It was definitely an Emerald Lagasse kind of thing. So I miss Terralith, but my terrain generation seems radically more stable without it, and so it's an acceptable trade-off. However, the biggest blow came with the discovery that almost all of the mods relating to structures were killing my system performance. This was especially true when I was out exploring fresh territory, but it also seemed to make a big difference even when the system was loading terrain that I had already explored and had been saved. Now, once I removed all of those, my system is almost as snappy and responsive as it is when I'm running vanilla Minecraft. And that's truly a tragedy, as I was looking forward to all that interesting content to help provide inspiration and context from which to build. Now, without any of that happening, I am limited to vanilla structures, or at least I'm limited to vanilla structures in the overworld, and so the pressure will be completely on me to create something interesting and worthwhile with this world, apparently all from scratch. However, there's plenty of good news. I have a lot of mods that bring new decorative and functional items into the game, and I was worried that the sheer volume of these would bring memory or other performance problems, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So while I may have to build everything from scratch, I will have a pretty impressive set of tools and materials from which to choose, at least once I get properly situated. Despite the fact that I don't think the odd mod update created terrain problems for me, I think it would be prudent to be more deliberate about how and when I update the mods, and to take steps that help me rolling back updates if it really comes down to that. Now, I built an Excel spreadsheet where I track the mods I use and the versions I'm currently using, as well as those I've previously used. For most people, this kind of structural process and protocol is a bit of a turnoff, but for me it's just how my brain works anyway, so it's no big deal for me. Now, I wouldn't exactly call it fun, but it is not nearly as tedious for me as it would be for most otherwise normal human beings. And then there's the backup regimen. Now, I've pledged to myself that I will make and keep long-term backups at the completion of each episode, and I will make temporary backups after each play session, keeping the last 4 or 5. This should ensure that I don't lose the whole shebang next time I hit an unexpected mod interaction. So with all these precautions and preparations in place, it's time to find a new home. Now, up to this point, I'd spent a considerable amount of time in preparation for this, and some of my plans have changed since I last told you about them after the Gryphon Hall meltdown. My mod mix has changed a little bit, and I'm now shooting for a bit more of a turn of the 20th century look and feel, roughly between 1905 and 1915. Of course, it won't be precisely accurate. After all, this is Minecraft, and I'm working with blocks that are 1 cubic meter in size. The forests are crawling with undead, giant spiders, and those god-awful creepers, and only a few things obey the in-game laws of gravity, including fluid, sand, gravel, and me. So I think that pretty much allows me to take any and all liberties that I feel like taking. So if you're looking for total and complete reality, go open a window. Finding a good seed was a lot harder this time. For Gryphon Hall, I had limited seeds using only large biomes, but for Gryphon Manor, I explored large biomes as well as default options. After about 80 seeds, I finally settled on one that uses the default options. The seed is -77 23 23 28 21 70 45 47 830. Now, I've done a little exploration in the creative version of the world, and I think this one will work nicely. Now, just as before, the main base will feature elements both above and below ground, but most of the base will be underground, and in keeping with my long tradition of base design, I will try to equip and enable the base so that it can handle any kind of resource generation or processing I might possibly need. Contrary to what you might think, Minecraft is not the only game I've ever played or continue to play. Now, I've enjoyed games from every genre over the years, but as I've gotten older and more crotchety, I've been spending almost all of my game time in builders, sandboxes, and simulations. Now, last summer I was playing a lot of City Skylines, and I was working on building a scenario where play would start with a village or small town in the traditional English countryside, and this is in fact where the idea of Gryphon Hall was first born. After the hall melted down, I wound up thinking about that scenario a lot while I worked with the preparations for Gryphon Manor, and I came to a decision. New to this series is the idea of thematic regions. Now, Gryphon Manor and the surrounding land will be thematically based on the English countryside with rolling hills and fields and a mix of architectural styles ranging from the Middle Ages through the Victorian and Edwardian eras. That will be Gryphonshire. The other regions will depend on the biomes I find. Some ideas I have are regions based on Japanese, Chinese, Polynesian, German, French, and Native American cultures. Now, some of these will be trickier to recreate in Minecraft than the others, but the challenge is part of the fun. And that's all I really have for the Gryphon Manor kickoff. I hope that you're intrigued by the new series and that you'll stick around to see how it takes off and grows. I'm particularly excited about how this is going so far, but only time will tell whether this truly blossoms. So until next time, I hope this finds you and yours in good health, good spirits, and perhaps a touch of good fortune. Cheers!